I never thought I would be the kind of woman who would cheat. I always prided myself on being loyal and committed to my husband, Mark. We had built a beautiful life together over the past 5 years, filled with laughter, shared dreams, and a cozy little house that smelled of fresh cookies and coffee. However, beneath the surface of our idyllic life, a longing had started to creep in, a longing for adventure, passion, and something more than the predictable routines that had become our daily existence. It all began when I joined a local book club, something I thought would be a fun way to meet new people and escape the confines of our routine. The club met every Thursday evening in the back room of a quaint cafe, where the aroma of roasted coffee mingled with the sweet scent of pastries. I remember walking in on that first evening, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Little did I know that this would be the catalyst for a series of events that would turn my world upside down. As I settled into the circle of chairs, I noticed two men who would change everything, Jake and Ryan. Jake was tall and had an easy smile that instantly drew me in. He had a way of making every joke feel like a private secret between us. Ryan, on the other hand, was more mysterious, with dark hair and intense green eyes that seemed to see right through me. They were both charming and intelligent, and I found myself increasingly captivated by their conversations. Every week, we dove into the pages of whatever novel we were reading, but as the weeks passed, the discussions often turned to personal anecdotes, flirtations, and playful banter. I would catch Jake stealing glances at me, and Ryan would subtly lean closer when he spoke, sending a thrill through me. I couldn't help but feel a spark igniting within me, something that had been dormant for far too long. As the book club continued, I found myself spending more time with Jake and Ryan outside of our Thursday meetings. We started going for drinks after the cafe sessions, and that's when things began to blur. The first time I felt the urge to flirt back, it shocked me. I had always been the good wife, the loyal partner, but something in me craved the attention they offered. It felt exhilarating to be desired again. One night, after a few glasses of wine, Jake playfully challenged me to a game of truth or dare. I remember the way the room felt charged, as if we were all teetering on the edge of something forbidden. I opted for dare, and he leaned in, a mischievous grin on his face. "I dare you to kiss me," he said. The world around us faded away as I leaned in and pressed my lips against his. It was electrifying, unexpectedly thrilling, and I could feel a rush of adrenaline flood my senses. The kiss lingered longer than it should have, and when I pulled away, I could see the surprise in his eyes, but also something deeper, an invitation. Before I could process what had just happened, Ryan chimed in, "I think I need a turn too." My heart raced as they exchanged glances, both men seemingly aware of the tension in the air. I was suddenly caught between the two of them, and it was thrilling yet terrifying. That night marked the beginning of a whirlwind I never saw coming. The lines of loyalty and love began to blur, and I found myself drawn to the excitement of living a double life. Each week, I felt like I was living in a romantic comedy, but with a twist of betrayal that made my heart pound in both fear and excitement. As the days turned into weeks, I was living a double life. I had my mundane routines with Mark, dinners, movie nights, and our usual weekend outings. But during the evenings spent with Jake and Ryan, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. Our book club meetings transformed into late-night escapades filled with laughter, flirtation, and stolen glances. It felt like stepping into a world where anything was possible, a world that was vibrant and exhilarating compared to my everyday life. One weekend, Jake suggested we all take a road trip to a nearby beach. The idea ignited something deep inside me, and I found myself saying yes before I could even think it through. Mark was busy with work that weekend, and I convinced myself that a little getaway wouldn't hurt. Plus, I had told him I was going for a solo retreat, something that would help me unwind. The drive to the beach was filled with music and laughter. Jake was in the front seat, while Ryan and I shared the back. As we passed through picturesque small towns and winding roads, the conversation flowed effortlessly. I felt a rush of freedom, and with every mile, my conscience faded further into the background. When we finally arrived, the beach was stunning. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting golden rays across the water. We set up a cozy spot on the sand, and as the sun began to set, Jake pulled out a bottle of wine he had brought along. We laughed, shared stories, and I felt the tension in the air shift from playful to something more intimate. As the sun sank below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the beach, the atmosphere shifted. The wine had loosened our inhibitions, and I could feel the chemistry between us intensifying. I caught Jake's eye, and he raised his glass in a toast, a mischievous grin on his face. "To new adventures," he said, and I couldn't help but feel the thrill of what lay ahead. As the night grew darker, the three of us found ourselves moving closer together. Ryan suggested we go for a walk along the water, and as we strolled barefoot on the cool sand, I felt a mix of exhilaration and guilt. This was all so wrong, yet it felt so right. We laughed and splashed in the waves, the sound of our laughter echoing in the night. Suddenly, Jake stopped and turned to me, his expression serious. "You know, I've wanted to kiss you again." The boldness of his statement sent a shiver down my spine. Before I could respond, he leaned in and pressed his lips against mine, and the world around us faded. I could feel Ryan watching, his gaze burning into us. When we pulled away, the reality of what I had just done hit me like a cold wave. Ryan stepped closer, his voice low and inviting. "What about me?" His boldness was intoxicating, and I felt my heart race again. I was caught between two men who wanted me, and I was losing myself in the thrill of it all. After that night at the beach, things spiraled quickly. What had started as innocent flirting evolved into a tangled web of lies and deceit. I had entered a world where my heart raced with excitement, but it was also filled with guilt. I had to juggle my life with Mark while keeping my new, exhilarating escapades with Jake and Ryan a secret. Every Thursday night, I would head to the book club, and those meetings became my lifeline. The anticipation of seeing them filled me with a rush of adrenaline. I found myself smiling more, my heart lightened by the thrill of living on the edge. I was still the devoted wife during the day, making dinners, doing laundry, and sharing my life with Mark, but at night, I transformed into someone else entirely. I started to feel like I was leading a double life. It was a twisted game, and I was both the player and the pawn. I would spend hours texting Jake and Ryan, planning our next escapades while ensuring that Mark remained oblivious to my secret life. I even started lying about my whereabouts, saying I was with friends or busy with work. Each life felt like another layer in the wall I was building between my two lives. One day, Mark asked me if I wanted to go on a weekend trip together. My stomach sank. I could feel the walls closing in around me, and I knew I had to think fast. "I can't this weekend. I promised to help my sister with a project," I said, forcing a smile. The guilt gnawed at me, but I couldn't let him suspect anything. Little did I know that my web of lies was about to unravel in the most shocking way. A few weeks later, during one of our book club meetings, the tension reached a boiling point. I arrived, buzzing with excitement and guilt from the previous night's rendezvous with Jake. As I walked into the cafe, my heart raced at the thought of what lay ahead. But then, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There, at the corner table, was a familiar face, my high school friend, Lisa. She hadn't changed much, the same blonde curls and bright smile, but the surprise in her eyes as she spotted me told me she was just as shocked to see me. We exchanged pleasantries, and I introduced her to Jake and Ryan, but I could sense a shift in the air. Lisa was perceptive, and as the evening went on, I felt her eyes narrowing with suspicion. I desperately tried to keep my composure, but I could tell she sensed something was off. We moved through the usual discussions about the book of the month, but all I could think about was how to keep my secrets hidden. Later that night, as we prepared to leave, Lisa pulled me aside. "Hey, are you okay? You seem different," she said, her eyes searching mine for answers. I smiled and brushed it off, but inside, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. I had been living in a bubble, but now it felt like the walls were closing in. The next day, I received a text from Jake asking if we could meet up that evening. My heart raced at the thought, but I also felt the weight of my lies crushing down on me. I couldn't keep running away from the truth. After a heated back and forth in my mind, I agreed to meet them at the beach again, hoping the soothing sound of the waves would calm my nerves. That evening at the beach felt different. The air was heavy with unspoken tension. As Jake and Ryan arrived, I could see the excitement in their eyes, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment everything would change. We set up our spot, but instead of the usual carefree banter, there was an uneasiness in the air. I could feel the weight of my decisions pressing down on me. As the sun began to set, we decided to take a walk along the shore. With each step, I felt a mixture of exhilaration and dread. Jake and Ryan were walking on either side of me, their presence electrifying. Just as I thought I might be able to escape the guilt for another night, I spotted Lisa on the beach with a group of friends. Panic shot through me. Had she followed me? In that moment, everything came crashing down. I turned to Jake and Ryan, my voice shaking. "I need to go," I said, urgency dripping from every word. But before I could take a step, Lisa approached, her expression unreadable. "I've been looking for you," she said, her eyes narrowing. "We need to talk." My heart sank as she pulled me aside, away from the boys. "What's going on, Sarah? You've changed, and I want to know why." The concern in her voice only fueled my guilt. I opened my mouth to deny everything, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I was caught in a web of lies, and I didn't know how to escape. Lisa's eyes pierced through me as she confronted me about my behavior. "You've been so distant lately, and now you're here with these two guys? What's really going on, Sarah?" I felt exposed, stripped of the facade I had built around myself. My heart raced, and I glanced back at Jake and Ryan, who were standing a few paces away, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern. I tried to play it cool, brushing it off with a laugh, but Lisa wasn't having any of it. "This isn't funny, Sarah. You can't keep lying to everyone, especially yourself. You're a married woman." Her words cut deep, and the weight of her truth crashed over me like a wave. I had been living in denial, but deep down, I knew I was teetering on the brink of something catastrophic. Suddenly, Jake approached us, his brow furrowed in concern. "Is everything okay?" he asked, but I could see the tension in his jaw. I felt trapped, caught between the lives I had created. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could respond, Lisa stepped forward, her voice steady. "No, it's not okay. Sarah is playing with fire, and it's going to burn everyone involved." The intensity of her words sent a chill through me. I glanced at Ryan, who stood silently, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension on his face. This was the moment of truth, and I could feel the air thick with anticipation. "I need to tell you both something," I said, my voice trembling. But before I could gather my thoughts, I heard my phone buzz in my pocket. I pulled it out, and the message sent my heart racing. It was Mark, asking where I was and why I was late. Panic surged through me as I realized I was at a crossroads. I could feel my life unraveling before my eyes, the threads of my double life hanging by a fragile thread. "Sarah, who is that?" Lisa's voice broke through my thoughts, and I looked up to see the concern etched on her face. I knew I couldn't keep lying, but how could I reveal the truth without tearing apart the lives of those involved? "It's my husband," I finally admitted, my voice barely a whisper. Jake's expression shifted from concern to something darker. "Your husband?" he echoed, his voice filled with disbelief. I could see the realization dawn on him. The thrill we had been riding together suddenly felt tainted by guilt. Ryan stood silently, watching the confrontation unfold, his eyes darting between us. "Yes," I said, my heart pounding. "I'm married. I never intended for any of this to happen." I glanced back at the beach where the waves crashed against the shore, wishing I could drown my secrets in the ocean. Lisa's expression softened, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. "You need to come clean, Sarah. This isn't just a game anymore." In that moment, I realized I was standing at the edge of a cliff, and the only way forward was to leap. "I can't keep lying," I said, my voice trembling. "I care about you both, but I can't hurt Mark. I need to end this." My heart ached at the thought, but I knew it was the right thing to do. But just as I was about to turn away, the sound of laughter caught my attention. I glanced over my shoulder and froze. Mark was walking down the beach, his eyes searching for me. My heart dropped as I realized he must have come looking for me. Panic surged through me, and I felt trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape. In that moment, everything slowed down. I felt like I was in a movie, with the waves crashing dramatically behind me and the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Mark was heading straight toward us, and I knew I had mere seconds to decide what to do. I had never wanted to be a liar, but now I was standing in front of my husband with two other men who had been my secret. "Sarah," Mark called, a warm smile on his face that instantly melted my heart. But as he got closer, his smile faltered, and confusion crept into his eyes as he took in the scene. I felt the ground beneath me shift, and I knew this was the moment everything would change. "Hey, babe," I said, forcing a smile even as my heart raced. I felt Jake tense beside me, and Ryan shifted uncomfortably. I could see Lisa standing a few feet away, her eyes wide with disbelief. This was a collision of worlds, and I had no idea how to navigate it. Mark approached, his eyes flickering between me and the two men beside me. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, and I knew I had to come clean. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. Before I could formulate a response, Lisa stepped forward, her voice steady. "Mark, you deserve to know the truth. Sarah has been seeing these two men behind your back." The shock in Mark's eyes was palpable, and I felt the world around me shatter. "No, it's not like that," I blurted out, but the damage was done. Mark's face fell, a mix of hurt and disbelief. "Is this true, Sarah?" he asked, his voice trembling. I could see the betrayal cutting through him like a knife, and I felt my heart breaking for the man I loved. In that moment, everything I had tried to hide exploded into the open. Mark's face paled as he processed Lisa's words, and I could see the confusion morphing into anger. "You were cheating on me?" he asked, his voice shaking with disbelief. The hurt in his eyes pierced through me, and I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. "Mark, please, let me explain," I pleaded, desperate to find the right words to make him understand. But it was too late. The hurt was written all over his face, and I could see the betrayal sinking in. Jake and Ryan stood awkwardly beside me, their expressions a mix of concern and regret. I could feel their presence weighing heavily on the situation. I wanted to scream at them for putting me in this position, but I also felt a pang of guilt for dragging them into my mess. "You could have told me," Mark said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't have to lie to me. I trusted you." Those words struck me like a blow. I had betrayed his trust, and I felt the weight of my actions crashing down on me. "I'm so sorry," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I got caught up in everything, and I lost sight of what mattered." But my apologies felt hollow, and I knew there was no way to fix the damage I had caused. Mark turned away from me, running a hand through his hair, clearly overwhelmed. "I can't believe this," he said, shaking his head. I could see the tears glistening in his eyes, and my heart shattered all over again. I had hurt the man who had loved me unconditionally, and now I had to face the consequences of my actions. As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt a sense of panic creeping over me. The three of us stood there in a tense silence, the sound of the waves crashing in the background, but it felt like a world away. Mark turned to face me, his eyes full of hurt and betrayal. "What do you want me to say, Sarah?" he asked, his voice strained. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. What could I possibly say that would undo the pain I had caused? My mind raced with memories of our life together, the laughter, the love, and the dreams we had shared. I could feel the weight of my decisions crashing down on me like a tidal wave. "I never wanted to hurt you," I finally managed to say, my voice trembling. "I got lost in all of this." But the words felt inadequate, like a Band-Aid on a deep wound. Mark shook his head, disbelief etched across his face. "I don't even know who you are anymore," he said, his voice breaking. The pain in his eyes was unbearable, and I could feel my heart splintering into a million pieces. I had turned my life upside down in a moment of weakness, and now I was facing the consequences. Lisa stood by, watching the confrontation unfold, and I could see the sympathy in her eyes. She had tried to warn me, to pull me back from the edge, but I had ignored her. I turned to Jake and Ryan, who were standing awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable in the situation. "You should go," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah, we can talk about this," Jake said, but I shook my head. "No, I need to figure this out." The three of us stood there, the tension palpable, and as they walked away, I felt a crushing sense of loss. I had chosen excitement over stability, and now I was left with nothing but regret. After Jake and Ryan left, the beach felt desolate. The waves continued to crash against the shore, but I was lost in my thoughts. Mark stood a few feet away, his back turned to me. I could see his shoulders shaking slightly, and it broke my heart to know that I had caused this pain. "Mark," I finally said, my voice breaking, "can we please talk?" He turned slowly, his expression a mix of anger and hurt. "Talk about what, Sarah?" "About how you've been lying to me. About how you've betrayed my trust." His words cut deep, and I felt tears streaming down my face. "I know I've made terrible choices," I said, my voice trembling. "I never meant for it to go this far. I got caught up in everything, and I lost sight of what was important." I stepped closer, desperate to bridge the chasm between us, but he held up a hand to stop me. "You don't get to just explain this away," he said, his voice firm. "You've hurt me in ways I can't even begin to process." I could see the pain in his eyes, and it shattered me. I had chosen a thrill over our love, and now I was left to face the consequences. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make this right." But deep down, I knew that my apologies couldn't erase the damage I had done. Mark's expression softened slightly, but the hurt was still there, raw and undeniable. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said finally, his voice low. "This changes everything." I felt my heart sink. The weight of my choices felt like a heavy anchor pulling me under. I had destroyed the life we had built together, and I was terrified of what that meant for us. After what felt like an eternity of silence, I looked at Mark, my heart pounding. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily between us. I could see the wheels turning in his mind as he contemplated our next steps. "Honestly, I don't know," he replied, running a hand through his hair. "I need time to think. This is too much to process right now." His words were like a dagger to my heart. I had hurt him so deeply that he needed space to breathe, and all I could do was stand there, feeling the weight of my mistakes. "Please, Mark," I said, desperation creeping into my voice. "I love you. I never wanted to hurt you." He looked at me, his eyes filled with pain. "Love isn't supposed to feel like this," he replied, his voice breaking. "You've shattered my trust." The realization hit me hard. I had taken our love for granted, believing it would always be there. But now, I was facing the very real possibility of losing everything. The air felt thick with tension, and I didn't know how to fix what was broken. Mark turned away again, looking out at the ocean. "I need some time alone," he said quietly. "I can't be around you right now." Each word felt like a death sentence for our relationship. I nodded, feeling tears streaming down my face as I realized how much I had jeopardized. "Take all the time you need," I managed to say, my heart aching. "I'll be here when you're ready." But deep down, I wondered if that would even matter. As Mark walked away, I felt a sense of despair wash over me. The world around me faded into the background as I stood there, alone, haunted by the choices I had made. As I sat on the beach, watching Mark walk away, I felt an emptiness I had never known. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the waves, but the beauty of the moment was lost on me. I had betrayed the one person who had always been there for me, and I felt utterly lost. In the silence, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Lisa. "Are you okay?" it read. I felt a mix of gratitude and dread. Lisa had always been my confidant, and now I needed her more than ever. I typed back quickly, "No, I'm not okay. It's a mess." A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. "Can we meet up? I think you need someone to talk to." I hesitated for a moment, but I knew I couldn't face this alone. I agreed, and we decided to meet at a diner nearby. When I arrived, Lisa was already sitting in a booth, her expression serious. "Hey," she said softly as I slid into the seat across from her. I saw what happened on the beach. Are you okay? I could feel the tears welling up again as I recounted the events of the evening. The confrontation with Mark, the pain of betrayal, and my sense of loss. As I spoke, Lisa listened intently, but there was something else in her eyes, something I couldn't quite place. When I finished, she took a deep breath and leaned in closer. Sarah, there's something I need to tell you, she said, her voice low and urgent. What is it? I asked, my heart racing. You're freaking me out. She looked around the diner, ensuring no one was listening before she continued. I found something out about Jake and Ryan. My heart dropped. What do you mean? I asked, anxiety clawing at me. What's going on? Lisa took a deep breath, her expression grave. I think they're connected in a way you didn't realize. They both knew each other before you ever met them. I felt the world tilt beneath me as I processed her words. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Lisa leaned in even closer, and what she revealed next shook me to my core. They're brothers, Sarah. Half-brothers, to be precise. Their mother had an affair, and they both have different fathers. But they both have one thing in common. They're both in love with you. I felt as if the air had been knocked out of my lungs. I couldn't wrap my mind around what she was saying. No, that can't be true, I whispered, my heart racing. But as I looked into her eyes, I saw the truth in them. This changes everything, I said, feeling the weight of her revelation settle heavily on my shoulders. The realization that I had become entangled in a love triangle with brothers was both shocking and devastating. Everything I thought I understood about my situation was flipped upside down, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss of consequences. As I sat there, the weight of my choices and the complex web of emotions overwhelmed me. I had lost Mark, but now I was faced with the fact that Jake and Ryan, two men I had fallen for, were connected in ways I never imagined. The journey ahead would be fraught with complications, secrets, and ultimately, a choice that could change everything. What I once thought was an adventure had turned into a chaotic reality, and I was left grappling with the shocking truth that would shape the rest of my life. The diner buzzed with the sound of clinking silverware and the low hum of conversation, but all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. Lisa's revelation echoed in my mind. Jake and Ryan were brothers. I felt like the walls were closing in on me, and I struggled to process the weight of the news. How had I become so entangled in their lives without even realizing it? Are you sure? I asked, my voice trembling. How do you know this? Lisa nodded, her expression serious. I overheard them talking at the beach one night when you weren't around. They didn't realize I was there, and it became clear that they both had feelings for you. I didn't put it all together until now. My mind raced as I tried to sort through the implications. If Jake and Ryan were brothers, then my relationships with them were more complicated than I could have ever imagined. My heart sank as I considered how I had flitted between them, oblivious to the deeper connection that existed. What if I had unknowingly set off a chain reaction of jealousy and rivalry between them? Sarah, Lisa said gently, snapping me out of my thoughts, you need to decide what you want. You can't keep playing with their hearts. This isn't just about you anymore. Her words hit me hard. I was standing at a crossroads, with one path leading back to the comfortable life I had built with Mark and the other spiraling into the unknown with Jake and Ryan. As I sat in the booth, I felt the weight of my decisions pressing down on me. The thrill of my secret life had been intoxicating, but now it felt suffocating. I loved the excitement and attention from Jake and Ryan, but could I really tear apart the lives of two brothers? And what about Mark? He had been my rock, and I had betrayed him in the most unforgivable way. I need to talk to them, I finally said, determination creeping into my voice. I have to face them and figure out what I want. I can't keep running away from this. Lisa nodded, a hint of pride in her eyes. That's a good first step. But remember, you need to be honest with yourself and with them. After our conversation, I left the diner feeling more resolute but also terrified. I decided to head back to the beach, the place where everything had begun to unravel. As I drove, my mind whirled with thoughts of what I would say. Would I choose Mark and try to mend our relationship? Or would I embrace the chaos and explore what my connection with Jake and Ryan meant? When I arrived, the beach was empty. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of the waves and the distant cries of seagulls. The sun had dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves, and began to walk along the shore. Suddenly, I spotted a figure in the distance. It was Jake, standing at the water's edge, his silhouette outlined against the sunset. My heart raced as I approached him, feeling a mixture of anxiety and longing. He turned at the sound of my footsteps, his expression shifting from surprise to concern. "Sarah," he said softly, stepping closer. "I didn't expect to see you here." I swallowed hard, the weight of my emotions threatening to spill over. "We need to talk," I said, my voice shaking. Jake nodded, his brow furrowed with worry. "Is it about what Lisa said?" My heart raced. "Yes," I admitted, feeling the tension crackle between us. "I didn't know you were brothers until just now. This changes everything." His expression shifted, and I could see the gears turning in his mind. "I never meant for you to get caught up in this. Ryan and it's complicated." I took a deep breath, fighting against the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "I need to know how you both feel. I can't keep going back and forth without knowing what I want." Just then, I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see Ryan approaching, his expression cautious. "Hey, I was looking for you," he said, glancing between me and Jake. The tension in the air thickened. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of urgency wash over me. "I just found out that you're brothers. I need to know what this means for us. I can't keep living in the shadows, hiding from the truth." As I stood there, the waves crashing around us, I felt like I was on the brink of a decision that would change everything. Jake and Ryan exchanged glances, and I could see the unspoken bond between them. I knew they both cared about me deeply, but the reality of their brotherhood added a layer of complexity I had never anticipated. "Sarah," Jake said, stepping closer, "I care about you more than you know, but I don't want to come between you and Ryan." Ryan nodded, his eyes searching mine. "We both feel the same way, but we can't compete for your affection. It's not fair to either of us." The weight of their words settled heavily on my shoulders. I realized that I was not just choosing between them. I was also choosing the kind of person I wanted to be. Would I embrace the chaos and pursue something with one of them, risking their relationship as brothers? Or would I turn back to Mark and seek forgiveness for the betrayal that had torn our lives apart? As the sun set in the background, casting long shadows on the sand, I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity wash over me. I knew what I had to do. "Here's what I'm going to say," I began, feeling my heart pound in my chest. "I'm going to step back from both of you for now. I need time to think about what I really want. This has all been too much, and I don't want to hurt either of you more than I already have." Jake's expression softened, and I could see the understanding in his eyes. "That's fair," he said quietly. Ryan stepped forward, his voice steady. "Just know that we both care about you, Sarah. No matter what happens, we'll be here." I nodded, feeling a bittersweet ache in my heart. "Thank you for understanding. I hope you both can forgive me." As I turned to walk away, I felt a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The decision I had made felt right, but I knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. I took one last look at the two men who had turned my life upside down and headed toward the path of self-discovery, ready to face whatever came next.